Hey guys, it's TheFrXion here, or Tiger Tank 12, however you call me, I don't really care, and welcome back to World of Tanks. Today we're going to be reviewing the 121B, now since it has been buffed in the patch 1.13. It's been 2 weeks since they released the patch, and we finally had the opportunity to play a patched 121B and a patched M60. We're going to be taking another look at the M60 in a separate video. Today it's all about the 121B. I want to take a look at all the vehicles that have been buffed. There is a really large amount of tanks that actually has been buffed in this patch. Quite a few premium tanks, quite a few reward vehicles. Also the Kreslavsky, which is a tier 8 premium tank rewards a reward vehicle that you were able to get via the Clan Wars back in the days, and now you were able to get via bonds. I actually did purchase it, and I'm going to be making a review of it and look at the changes, the buffs that Wargaming have implemented on it. So let's take a look at what has happened with the 121B. Now the initial thing with the 121B is this is supposed to be a 1-to-1 with a 105mm gun, like, you know, the Western style 105mm medium tanks or main battle tanks, and not like the Soviet style very large caliber 122 that you also have on the 1-to-1, the standard version. The thing is, obviously you expect better gun values, you expect better accuracy, you probably expect a better rate of fire, but less damage output because it's a 105mm gun instead of a 122mm gun, because that caliber is going to drop off by a little bit, so the damage output is going to drop off as well. When this tank first came out, I was really excited because there were not a lot of tanks in World of Tanks that were like the T62 or the Object 140. Like, if you wanted to play them, you had to play the Soviet tech tree. Now, a couple of years down the line, you can see that there are quite a few tanks that are similar to it. You have the Polish medium tank that is also kind of similar to it. You have the Chinese 1-to-1, and you have the 1-to-1B. You have the STB-1, and obviously the Progetto, and all those kind of tanks are, well, more a combination of armor and a punchy 105 or 100mm gun that really has a high rate of fire and decent amount of pen, but maybe not the highest alpha. That's something that has always been missing in the game, and that's one of the reasons why I really enjoyed the Object 140 and the T62A, and I think it's really cool that they added the 1-to-1B into that equation as well. But the problem was just the rate of fire on this vehicle wasn't very good, and it felt really sluggish. For a medium tank, you know, you expect to have at least some kind of maneuverability, but this tank was really slow. One of the main problems with this vehicle was probably the engine power that you had on this tank before. The top speed, I think, was 50 kilometers per hour. That was the maximum speed that you were able to get. And you can see they actually buffed it by quite a bit. So the top speed has been increased by 5 kilometers. So I am running currently the turbocharger class 1, and it is on base now 55 kilometers per hour top speed. That's really, really nice, and you really feel the difference. Now with a turbocharger you can get up to 60 kilometers per hour, and it just feels really cool to have a vehicle that is faster, that has more mobility, and it just feels overall sharper. It feels sharper when you're playing this tank, and I cannot underline how important mobility has become in World of Tanks, and how important it really is now, because if you don't have the mobility, if you don't have the acceleration, you are going to be lagging behind it. You cannot rely on a very good gun if you don't have the full package of mobility and a little bit of protection. That's what this tank has, and I think it finally has found its place in this game. Also, the reload time has decreased, so I think it was previously 8.9 seconds to reload, or maybe 8.8. They dropped that also down a little bit to, I think, 8.7. 0.2 seconds. Like, it doesn't really change the rate of fire like very drastically. I think maybe it was even 9 seconds, but still the DPM now that we have with a very good crew and with a gun rammer is 3,424 damage per minute. So that's basically at, you know, on a same kind of level as other tier 10 medium tanks, and I think that's a really good place to be. Other than that, they haven't really changed a lot. The armor layout is still the same. This vehicle has gotten a pretty good armor upgrade when it was turned into a HD variant of the tank, so you still have very good armor. The main star of this show is definitely the 105mm gun. It has decent dispersion, 0.31 maybe. Let's be honest, for a Western tank, if we pick the Leopard 1, obviously it cannot reach that kind of accuracy that the Leopard 1 has. But on the other hand, you just have to say, like, for a Chinese tank, 0.31 is really, really good accuracy, especially for a Chinese medium tank, if you previously played the 121, the non-B version. The aim time is also very good still. The rate of fire, everything, the pen is great. You have heat shells if you cannot go through the armor of certain vehicles that are maybe like super heavily armored, such as the Jagdpanzer E100, and the 390 alpha damage is also rather nice. So I'd say all around this tank has become quite competitive, and I think it was just those little things like mobility and the reload time to get it up to snuff, to get it to the place where it needed to be. Now, one of the downsides to this tank certainly stems from the lack of gun depression. It's a Chinese tank. It's a Eastern Soviet bloc, Chinese Communist bloc, or whatever you want to call it, kind of vehicle. 5 degrees of gun depression. Not really good at tier 10. That's really, really bad. You have to look into that when you're playing this vehicle. Hit points, 1,950, that's almost 2k, but you can definitely work with this. The armor is also really good, 135 at the front, 80 on the side, 60 at the rear, 200mm at the side, 60 on the back of the turret. So you can really work with this tank if you need to. Mobility wise, it is now really on a very good place, and I think you'll have quite a nice time. Now, the engine power, that's one of the things. Probably it will not accelerate as quickly. Just check in with maybe the, well, not the Progetto, since it's very similar. The Progetto is actually very similar here. So 770 is now on the 121B with the equipment. We could probably push the Progetto 65 as well. The weight and load limit is actually quite similar to the 121B. So now very competitive. Now the STB1 probably is a bit of a better representation. You can see this tank weighs a little bit less. It has a better engine, 950, so 950 horsepower. It's going to be accelerating quite a bit faster than the 121B. But it can work now. And concealment and spotting, nothing has changed very much there. Nothing has changed at all. So I'd say this tank has finally arrived in a place where it can do really, really well. It's no longer a sluggish tank. Also, if you equip it with the turbocharger and maybe some other things, you can maybe get the, you can even increase the mobility by quite a bit. You can increase the, or decrease the aim time and decrease the reload time. So I think you have a very nice looking tank now on your hands that you can buy for bonds if you don't have it already in your garage. Very cool tank, and I'd say we have to check out some gameplay to just see how noticeable these changes are. So let's do that right now. So we're going to be taking a look at one game in particular. Oh god. Some words in English are really difficult to pronounce when you have a very dry throat. So either way, with the 121B or with any tier 10 medium, heavy, whatever kind of vehicle, this is a perfect matchup. You have no artillery pieces, you only have 4 enemy tier 10 vehicles, all in all. The rest are tier 9s and tier 8 vehicles. So the immediate first thing you notice, if you have played the 121B prior to the buff, is that this vehicle did not accelerate very quickly. It just wasn't a very fast medium tank. What hasn't changed though, on the other hand, is the lack of gun depression. All of the gun depression you have on this vehicle is basically 5 degrees. 5 degrees of gun depression is really, that's horrible. That used to be the norm for Soviet medium tanks or Soviet tanks back in the day. And even the Soviet tanks have finally reached a place where they have gone to 6 or 7 degrees of gun depression. And that is a big difference, because right there we would have been able to put a shot into the IS-3 too with 7 degrees of gun depression, but that's not something you can do with the 121B in a position such as this one. Maybe I'm playing this tank wrong right here because you don't have the gun depression, but you need to contest the middle. The middle is very important, and unfortunately, because the lack of gun depression, we just weren't able to hit that T92. The thing is, with the lack of targets that we can really efficiently engage without putting ourselves in harm's way, I decide to reposition myself, and with the added mobility that they've added to this vehicle, the 5 additional kilometers per hour, and also with the ability to put on additional equipment, or just put on equipment that really gives you an edge in mobility, we were able to just get into this position here very quickly. Very lucky there. Don't forget about the 121B's armor. It actually does have quite a bit of armor, and we got very lucky. At E4 just bounced off our shells, of our tracks. His shell didn't manage to go right through our track. So at this moment in time, we are controlling the middle very well, and I just want to put on some more pressure. I have very good view range on this vehicle. I have a pretty good crew, and I'm just gonna try to, maybe use the old school tactic of when you don't have any gun depression, maybe try with gun elevation. And, by driving into a position where you can actually use the gun elevation as your depression. So you try to move up into a wall or something to raise your tank, your back, and be able to shoot the targets. So right there, a very nice, easy target, the Kampfpanzer 7 RH. We take him, or we try to take out the T92 out of the game. We put a big shot into the KPZ, and unfortunately for us, that T92 gets knocked out by the T30 before we were able to do some damage. But this is where this tank really has become very interesting, in my opinion. It has a very nice rate of fire now. Its DPM is really good. I'd say it's now on a level such as other Soviet medium tanks and other medium tanks at tier 10. I have it currently at about 3,400. I think the base DPM would be 3,000, and they did decrease the reload time, which is also a big thing for this tank. That was one of the big problems that you had. You felt very sluggish, you just weren't fast enough, and the time it took for you to be able to put some shots into your opponents was just a very uncomfortable kind of situation. Now, what you have to keep in mind with the 121B still is that the accuracy, although for a Chinese tank it's pretty damn good, 0.31, I'd still say there are certain premium, certain medium tanks at tier 10 that have better sniping capabilities, such as the Leopard 1, such as the K91. There are vehicles that are just performing way better at longer range engagements than the 121B, but with the added kind of rate of fire, with a very good armor layout on this vehicle, you now can actually take the fight into closer engagements, so you don't have to go into those long range engagements, but you can be really effective at medium to short ranges even. So that's a really cool thing. Now, so unfortunately though, I don't understand how that shot bounced off the G-SOAR, but since the reload time has really decreased quite drastically, I remember it was actually quite long, we managed to put a very nice shot into the G-SOAR. Now, because we have the mobility now, we can just get into this really nice position in between the enemies. We know that we have enemies to our left, we have enemies to our right. We somehow bounced the K91 PT on the side, even with 261 millimeters of armor and armor penetration with the APCR shells. But the second shot does do damage, and now we're able to just farm this K91 PT. But very funnily right there, we just see Pantera committing suicide, losing about all of his HP, jumping down a cliff. And we did also get like the assistance damage that we received by spotting him. Unfortunately, this tank is not invincible. That's something you'll have to get used to. Obviously, that's a good thing. We don't want invincible tanks here. But luckily for us, since we're fast enough, we can get behind cover before the T-30 or the Leopard Prototype A can put another round into us. But that really hurt. Both of these shots, one of them premium, the other one non-premium with the T-30, they can really do a lot of damage to you if they know where to shoot you. The 1-1B is not a tank with massive amounts of armor, but you can really work with the armor if you know where your opponents are. But with the new rate of fire, with the mobility, you really are now able to get to the positions where you need to be in a stage, in a very late stage of the game where you just want to get some more damage before the game ends. So we are now at 3.15k damage, and we're just looking for the T-57 and the T-30 to do some additional damage now. Don't forget, you are a one-shot for T-30, and the T-57 can finish us off with definitely 2 shots. I don't think he's going to be rolling that high that he's going to be able to finish us off with a single shot. But right here, we can see a Batchet 12T, Tier A light tank. And if you just look at the ability to back up as quickly as we can now, 28 kilometers per hour, top speed going backwards, it would have been like a better decision to drive away, but we still managed to get quite a bit of assistance damage in the end, and I think dealing 3,570 damage is still pretty good. So I can't even really blame anyone for that. That was just a misplay on my part, and obviously the T-30 wanted to kill. He wanted to get some additional damage before the game ended, and the Batchet 12T does get the kill on the 57 with a very nice fire in the end. So let's just skip back real quickly before we died so we can take a look at the 1-1B once more, and we can have a little bit of a verdict on the 1-1B, because I think it is now a very interesting kind of vehicle in the game. So this tank used to be a reward tank that you would only be able to get by playing Clan Wars or by participating in Clan Wars, and now everyone was guaranteed to get one. You were able to get it if you had enough fame points back then, I think it was called. And since I didn't live in the same time zone as I'm on in Europe, and I don't really have the same time zone as North America, I didn't really have the opportunity to play Clan Wars. But this was one of the tanks that you were able to get, and I think a lot of people passed on it because it just didn't really feel like a tier 10 medium tank that was very well rounded. It just always felt a bit underpowered, and I think that Wargaming did a really good job now by adding the additional speed going forwards and backwards and giving you a better rate of fire, because I think that's exactly what has been missing on the 1-1B. I think it's a really cool and novel tank because it is a Chinese medium tank that doesn't run with a 122mm gun, but with a 105mm gun, and it's more on par with the Leopard or with the M48. So it's kind of a Western design, at least in the sense of armament, but at the same time you have that very Soviet-like or communist-like tank chassis and turret design, which is I think is really cool. So I was a big fan. I was really sad that I wasn't able to get it, but then I unlocked it, I played it, and I wasn't really feeling it as much. Now with the buffs, I really think that this tank has come into a position where it can be really worked very well, and where you can have a lot of fun if you have the right equipment on it. I think the speed is now just the meta of the game, so you really need the additional speed that you have with the equipment that you can use. And this is really a tank that now encompasses really great features. I think the gun handling is great for a Chinese tank. I think the mobility is great, not just for a Chinese tank, but I think every tier 10 vehicle mobility is really good here. And the only thing that you're lacking right now is the gun depression and maybe the accuracy, but still you can work it really, really nicely. The rate of fire is great, it does enough damage, you have a great DPM. So this is a tank that I would really pick up if you're a big fan of medium tanks and if you have 10,000 bonds lying around. Just play the game, don't work yourself up. This tank is not going to be going away anytime soon. So I really think it is now worth it, and I'm gonna stick to that. Hopefully nothing changes there. Hopefully you can still unlock it, because I think it's a great tank, has great potential. If you're in several situations, you can really work with this vehicle. So as always, I hope you guys liked this video. If you did, as always, like, comment, and subscribe, and I see you guys on the next one. Until then, have a good one.